As the Toronto Blue Jays season comes to another disappointing end, reports are starting to circulate surrounding many Toronto Blue Jays that won't be returning next year, as big changes are on the horizon for the Toronto Blue Jays. So we're breaking down the 5 most likely Toronto Blue Jays that won't be returning next season. So stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we do, if you're a part of the percentage that aren't subscribed to the channel, about 70% of you aren't, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you enjoy the daily Jays content. But let's just dive right into it today. Obviously, the Jays season is coming to an end, and it's another disappointing one, except this year, unlike the past couple years, they're not even making the playoffs. And as a result of the lackluster offense, lackluster pitching, and bullpen, many fans are demanding changes. Now, whether you're on the side of wanting the personnel to change, whether you want the management to change, maybe John Schneider, there's no secret, and it's no doubt the Toronto Blue Jays team is going to look very, very different next season. And a lot of the players that we're watching right now every single night as the season comes to a close, a lot of them won't be a part of the Toronto Blue Jays team next year. We're going to break down a lot of those players. So let's just dive right into it. And we're going to start with not a player that's on the team. We're going to start with one of the most obvious guys that could potentially be on the way out, and that is Ross Atkins. So an article also dropped, and I'm going to be mixing up some of the article as well as some guys that I think are going to be gone. And let's just start with Ross Atkins. So this report has come out saying that Ross Atkins continues to prove he should not be in charge anymore. And we all know that Ross was named the GM back in 2016. He's yet to win a playoff series since he's joined the team. Obviously, he's done an okay job. He deserves some credit for building formidable rosters. But this is a results-based business, and the Blue Jays simply haven't won enough to justify this man keeping his job. And obviously, we know last year they were all in on Shohei Ohtani. They struck out. We had guys like Chris Bassett call out the front office to a degree, saying you can't put all your eggs in one basket surrounding any player, but especially if you strike out on a guy. And they ultimately went with Kevin Kiermaier and IKF and Justin Turner this year. So I'm starting with Ross Atkins because he is one of the most likely Blue Jays to be on the move this offseason. Now, I do ultimately think that Mark Shapiro will probably keep him around for one more offseason, but this is the final chance for Ross Atkins to prove that he can be a competent enough general manager to lead this team to the playoffs, because in a year now the Toronto Blue Jays are supposed to be thriving. Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. are supposed to be hitting their primes, which they are, especially Vladdy. He failed to build a competitive team around Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and as a result, they aren't going to make the playoffs this year, and this has been one of the most disastrous years in Toronto Blue Jays' recent memory. And ultimately, there is some things to take out of it. He rebuilt the prospect pool pretty well, but it's very disappointing that the season the Toronto Blue Jays are having. So we're starting with Ross Atkins, and that is a very, very interesting one. And let me know in the comments, are you on the side of you think Ross Atkins should stay one more year, or should he be let go already? Because I know a lot of fans out there want him gone and want him gone very, very soon. But now let's dive into a player that has kind of, he took the heart of Jays fans last year, and now he's starting to get hot again a little bit, but it's Davis Schneider. Now, there is a good chance that Davis Schneider is not a part of the opening day roster next season. Now, he still has 13 home runs, 46 RBIs this year. He's only 25 years old. His OPS plus is 81, but getting off to one of the best starts in MLB history last season. We know that Davis Schneider came in. He had an unreal debut, one of the better debuts we've ever seen in baseball history, but especially in Blue Jays history in Fenway Park. He hit a home run in his first at-bat, and I believe the first pitch he ever saw was a home run. But the thing with Davis Schneider is that now that MLB pitching has started to figure him out, he's starting to fall off just a little bit. Now, he's not an elite defender in any way. He kind of can play everywhere, which is obviously good, but he's starting to cool off. And he had a whole season. This was the year, especially because of the way the Toronto Blue Jays were. They traded a lot of their veterans. They traded Kevin Kiermaier, traded IKF, who was taking a lot of Davis Schneider's playing time in the infield. Although he hasn't really played infield that much. But the outfield was a bit clogged with Varsho in left, Kevin Kiermaier in center, and George Springer in right. But once they traded Kevin Kiermaier, they obviously got Joey Loperfido back at the trade deadline anyways, in exchange for Yusei Kikuchi. But there was a lot of chances for Davis Schneider to take over and really run with any sort of job. But ultimately, he hasn't been able to do that. Yes, he's been heating up as of late, but in all likelihood, he is going to be headed not necessarily out of Toronto. I just think that he is going to start the season in AAA next year unless some major improvement happens, whether that's in off-season training, unless he has a crazy finish to this year. But even if he does, and he's been heating up as of late, he's still running and rocking an 81 OPS plus. There's a good world where Davis Schneider is no longer a Toronto Blue Jay heading into the future. So let me know what your thoughts are on this one as we move on now to a very interesting one, and that is, of course, Bo Bichette. And we've made a few videos on him. He's running an OPS plus of 71 this year, which, again, a huge down year for him. But ultimately, reports have started to come out that the Jays are going to be exploring trading Bo Bichette from Bob Nightingale, from John Heyman, from a bunch of different guys. Even Shai Davidi has come out and said that the future is a bit murky for Bo Bichette. Bo obviously came out and said he does and he plans to win in Toronto with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So it seems like Bo wants to stay in Toronto. But all these reports that have come out, whether it's from John Heyman, Bob Nightingale, it seems like the Toronto Blue Jays at the very least are going to explore trading Bo Bichette. And if they don't think they can win with Bo Bichette on their team, which, again, they're going to be building around Vladimir Guerrero Jr., they're going to be hopefully making some big additions next season, or this offseason, that is, sorry. But at the same time, you're running Bo Bichette out there every single day. He is one of the better shortstops in the league when healthy. His defense is still a very big question mark, and he's coming off of the worst professional season of his career, and he was injured the whole way through. Now, again, he has one more year on his contract. This upcoming season, like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., is the last year of his contract, but there's a world where Bo Bichette is traded this offseason, and it's not crazy to think that they let him go, even though his value is still probably at its lowest. They could get an absolute haul for him. And if they want to readjust their team and rebuild around, or retool, I should say, around Vladimir Guerrero Jr., then I'm sorry to all you Bo Bichette fans out there, because there's a good chance that he is on the move this offseason and could no longer be a Toronto Blue Jay. And we didn't get to see much of him this year, but we saw a lot of him over the past few years, and he's been a critical part as to why the Toronto Blue Jays have made the playoffs the past handful of years. And is it a coincidence that the one year that he doesn't play very much and was hurt, they don't make the playoffs? Obviously, there's a bunch of other factors, but Bo Bichette is very crucial to this team, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him. Now, speaking of Bo Bichette and just all these guys, let's focus on someone who runs a lot of these players and kind of puts out the lineup every single day, and that is John Schneider. Now, there is a good chance that John Schneider takes the fall for this failure of a season. This article predicts that John Schneider will be the one to take the fall, and it says in the modern day, it's hard to know exactly what to blame the manager for. You think back to the José Berríos decision in the wildcard game that gives all of us nightmares. There was that. There was a lot of different decisions, even dating all the way back to a couple years ago against the Mariners in the wildcard game when he pulled Kevin Gausman when he was rolling. There's a lot of different decisions that John Schneider has made. Now, I don't think it's necessarily John Schneider's fault that the Toronto Blue Jays didn't make the playoffs this year. I think that they put out a very lackluster offense, a very lackluster bullpen that at the same time was riddled with injuries. But I think at the end of the day, if they would have went ahead and addressed the offense like all of us knew and thought, you can go back and watch videos from a year ago when it was the offseason. We were saying, hey, they need to address the offense. It's Ross Atkins' fault for that. But there's a chance that John Schneider ends up being the fall guy. And if he does, I won't be super disappointed, but I don't think it's fully fair to blame John Schneider for this disaster class of a season, even though there is a lot of justification in saying that he cost them a couple of wild card series, specifically last year when they pulled José Berríos. Now, whether that was his decision, whether that was everybody's decision, Don Mattingly's, whoever you want to blame, Pete Walker even, it was a brutal decision. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on that. And now let's go to the final guy, and it's not the most exciting one, but he has been putting up a very rough season, and that is Zach Pop. Now, Zach Pop played 57 games at Toronto this year, an ERA plus of 72, and after giving up another lead in yesterday's game, fans are basically crying out saying, hey, there's no world where Zach Pop returns to the Blue Jays this season, and I don't think, or next season, sorry, I don't think he does. I think at this point, the Zach Pop experiment is over. He has some nasty pitches, and he has a nasty arsenal. He just hasn't been able to put it together at the major league level at all. Has an unreal sinker, but that sinker hasn't been playing at the MLB level, and if you can't play at the MLB level, obviously, you can only run with him for so long. And again, you look at his stats here. He's only 28 years old. I just think with a 5.66 ERA, there's a good world that he is gone in the upcoming year in exchange for some other guys, even like Dylan Tate, who has really shined for the Toronto Blue Jays. Ryan Yarbrough as well. They got a lot of different guys that they're trying out. They're making tons of different signings. And I think Zach Pop ends up being the odd man out. But let me know in the comments which out of these 5 guys you think are most likely to leave the Toronto Blue Jays next season, and which ones do you want to see stay. Let me know in the comment section down below. We'll see you soon.